चौधरी। आप उपन्यासकार, कवि और समालोचक हैं। आपकी 80 से अधिक कृतियां प्रकाशित हैं। आप गुजरात विश्वविद्यालय के हिंदी विभागाध्यक्ष हैं। He has served in the executive board and general council of Sahitya Akademi and was appointed as a jury member of the 25th Indian Film Festival. He was president of Gujarati Sahitya Parishad. He is the recipient of numerous awards and honors like the Gyanpith Award, the Sahitya Akademi Award, and the Sahitya Akademi's Fellowship, which is the highest honor. आपका मैं मंच पर स्वागत करती हूँ। हमारे पैनलिस्ट हैं और उनसे भी निवेदन करते हैं कि जैसे आपके नाम होते जाए आप कृपया मंच पर पधारें। अंकित नहरवाल, आप हिंदी के लेखक, अनुवादक और समालोचक हैं। आप पंजाब विश्वविद्यालय में सहायक प्राध्यापक हैं। आप साहित्य अकादमी के युवा पुरस्कार और युवा आलोचना पुरस्कार से सम्मानित हैं। आप 18 पुस्तकों के लेखक हैं। निवेदन है आप कृपया मंच पर आए। अन्वेषा सिंघबल, आपके 2 कविता संग्रह, एक बच्चों की पुस्तक दांत और बच्चों की पुस्तकों के कई अनुवाद प्रकाशित हैं। आपकी कविता पुस्तक सुलूस के लिए आपको साहित्य अकादमी का युवा पुरस्कार प्राप्त है। आशुतोष भारद्वाज, Ashutosh Bharadwaj is a bilingual journalist, fiction writer, and literary critic. He experiments with prose in various forms and genres. He is the only journalist in India to have won the prestigious Ramnath Goenka Award for Excellence in Journalism for 4 consecutive years. He has received the Krishna Baldev Ved Fellowship, was a writer in residence at the Sangam House in Bangalore, and was a fellow at the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla. दर्शिनी दादावाला, आप गुजराती कवयित्री और साहित्यिक समालोचक हैं। वर्तमान में आप बड़ौदा के महाराजा सियाजीराव विश्वविद्यालय में गुजराती साहित्य की सहायक प्राध्यापक के रूप में कार्यरत हैं। She has published a well-received book on theoretical criticism in Gujarati, apart from several poems, articles, and reviews in English, Hindi, and Gujarati. She is the founder-president of Samaviti Foundation. The foundation has recently created an India Book of Record for disseminating highest quality of literary text in maximum number through social media platforms. Mercy Margaret, आप तेलुगु कवयित्री, लेखिका और नाटककार हैं। आपके 2 कविता संग्रह और 2 नाटक प्रकाशित हैं। आपकी कविताएं सभी दक्षिणी भाषाओं, हिंदी और अंग्रेजी में अमुदित है। आपके प्रथम कविता संग्रह मार्टल मोडुगु के लिए आपको साहित्य अकादमी का युवा पुरस्कार मिला है। With the collaboration of Department of Language and Culture Telangana, she is organizing Darshana, a program by Kavit Varshala that introduces eminent poets and writers in Telugu to aspiring poets and writers. Nabanita Sengupta. Nabanita Sengupta is an assistant professor of English in Kolkata. She has authored The Ghumi Days, translated a Bengali lady in English, a Bengali lady in England, and Chambal Encyclopedia of Art Literature. साहित्य अकादमी की ओर से मैं श्री ओम नागर से निवेदन करती हूँ कि आप कृपया हमारे अध्यक्ष और सभी पैनलिस्ट का अभिनंदन करें। Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for the panelists over the next 2 hours. Please give them a warm welcome. I hand over the session to the Honorable Chair और अध्यक्ष महोदय से ये भी निवेदन करती हूँ कि हमारे पास केवल 2 घंटे का समय है और ये सत्र 12 बजे तक का है, तो यदि हम सब समय में रहें तो अच्छा रहेगा। धन्यवाद। God bless. आपकी मर्जी, आपकी तरफ से।
सभी आदरणीय साहित्यकार और सभागृह में विराजमान साहित्यकार, हमारे वरिष्ठ कवि, हमारे यानी सारे देश के वरिष्ठ कवि सितांशु, कांजी पटेल और अन्य मित्र, ये जो मित्र हैं इनमें से 2-3 को मैं जानता हूँ। आशुतोष मिले थे तो मैंने पूछा था कि हिंदी में बोलेगो या अंग्रेजी में। इन्हें कहा कि अंग्रेजी में बोलूंगा। और ये अमीषा जो है उसके पीछे कल मैं बैठा था और उसकी पेन गिर गई थी तो मैंने वो दी थी उसको। और दर्शिनी बड़ौदा से है और नमनीता जी का नाम सुना है मैंने पहले से। अनुवाद कुछ आप करती हैं और इन मित्रों को बाद में पहचानेंगे, इनको सुनेंगे, इससे विशेष परिचय होगा। आप तेलुगु में बोलेंगी? अच्छा, हिंदी जानती? वहां तो हैदराबाद में सब हिंदी भी बोलते हैं, अच्छी बोलते हैं। हाँ, वाह। तो बड़ी खुशी की बात है कि सब उपस्थित हैं और सभागार में भी कई लोग हैं। वैसे कविता के लिए इतने आवश्यक नहीं है, कम हो तो भी चल सकता है। थोड़ी सी बात मैं करूं अपने विषय में। बचपन में गांव के महादेव जी के मंदिर में हमारे पिताजी अध्यक्ष थे भजन मंडली के, तो वहां मैं जाता था शनिवार एकादशी को और गीत रास वगैरह सुनता था, नाचता था। बाद में प्रतिदिन सुबह गीता पढ़ता था, सुबह स्नान करके गीता पढ़ता था। बाद में फिर गांधी जी और विनोबा के कारण गीता का अर्थ समझ में आया और विनोबा जी का काम भी थोड़ा बहुत मैंने किया। छुट्टियों में वो भूदान यात्रा भी करता था। मैंने नहीं सोचा था कि मैं उपन्यास लिखूंगा, लेकिन लिखते लिखते लिखता ही गया। बहुत लिखा, आप कल्पना भी नहीं कर सकते कि आप इसका नकल करें तो भी कितने साल हो सकते हैं, लेकिन बहुत लिखा। लेकिन मेरा प्रथम प्रेम तो कविता ही है। और मुझे जो विशेष प्रिय है वो माँ के बारे में है। माँ ने तो माया एज मोक्ष, माता के लिए तो माया वही मोक्ष है। माया और मोक्ष में विरोध है, लेकिन माता अगर माता है तो उसकी माया में सब आ जाता है। लंबी कविता है और कई बातें उसमें आसानी से आई हैं। इन दिनों में देखता हूं कि गुजराती में नए लिखने वाले, गजल वाले, कविता वाले माँ के बारे में अवश्य लिखते हैं और कुछ अच्छी पंक्तियां भी उसमें आ जाती है। तो ये एक खोज है मानव जाति की इतनी सदियों के बाद कि क्या है, ईश्वर है या नहीं, लेकिन माँ है। माँ है तो सब कुछ है। तो एक अनुभूति है। ईश्वर के बारे में, खुदा के बारे में भी लोग इधर उधर कहते हैं, लेकिन गीता जिस आत्मज्ञान की बात करती है उसी में सब आ जाता है। गीता के अंत में अर्जुन स्वीकार करते हैं, करिष्ये वचनम तव। तो हमारे उमाशंकर भाई इसका अर्थ करते थे। उमाशंकर जी ने उपनिषदों के बारे में भी लिखा है। वो अकादमी के अध्यक्ष भी थे। भारत की कई भाषाएं जानते थे, बोलते थे, मराठी, बंगला वगैरह, अंग्रेजी में भी लिखते थे। उन्होंने कहा कि करिष्ये यानी कर्म, कर्मयोग, वचनम, कन्नड़ भाषा में तो वचन साहित्य बड़ा समृद्ध है, ज्ञान का साहित्य। तो ज्ञान, वचनम और तव यानी भक्ति। कर्म, ज्ञान और भक्ति तीनों की बात अर्जुन स्वीकार करता है अंत में, करिष्ये वचनम तव। तो गीता से मैंने ये अर्थ पाया कि अनासक्त कर्म यही हमारा कार्य है, फल मिले या न मिले। तो इस दृष्टि से मैं लिखता गया, संस्थाओं में भी काम करता गया, कुछ पत्रिकाओं के साथ भी काम किया, पत्रकारिता भी की। अब थका तो पिछले 6 महीने से मेरी एक पुरानी पुस्तक है अद्यतन कविता, उसको फिर से लिख रहा हूँ, बहुत कुछ जोड़ रहा हूँ उसमें, और 2-3 महीनों में उसका प्रकाशन भी होगा। तो मैंने कहा कि कविता मेरा प्रथम प्रेम है, और लिखना क्यों लिखता हूँ, जीने के लिए लिखता हूँ। ज्ञानपीठ पुरस्कार मिला तब मैंने लेख किया था, लिखना ही जीना है। केवल लिखना ही जीना है ऐसा नहीं, लिखना भी जीने का एक भाग है। और जब कुछ लिख पाते हैं हम, हमें आनंद आता है, दूसरे तक आनंद पहुंचता है। ये अपेक्षित नहीं है कि सभी तक पहुंचे, लेकिन संभव है कि पहुंचे। ये बड़ा कठिन विषय है कि हमारी रचनाएं सभी तक पहुंचे। कल मैं आदिवासी लेखिकाओं को, लेखकों को सुन रहा था। सभी की चिंता थी कि हमारे प्रकाशक नहीं है, हमारे नहीं भाई, हमारे भी नहीं है। ये तो संकट है सारे विश्व में। ये जो नए माध्यम आए हैं, इन्होंने पाठक के लिए दूसरे विकल्प शुरू कर दिए हैं। फिर भी हम लोग लिखते हैं, छपते हैं, पहुंचते हैं, अनुवाद होते हैं। अनुवाद भी एक बड़ा काम है, और मैं मानता हूं कि इनमें से सभी ने थोड़ा बहुत अनुवाद किया होगा। तो इस क्रम से शुरू करें। परिचय सबका आप संचालक देंगी या मैं दूंगा? पूरा दे दिया जी, सबका पूरा दे दिया। लेकिन दर्शिनी बड़ौदा में हिंदी गुजराती विभाग में पढ़ाती है, कहा आपने? अच्छा, बोल दिया, तब तो बस तो आप बोलिए, आइए, यहाँ बैठे बैठे बोलेंगी। आज जाइए। हाँ, शुभकामनाएं, धन्यवाद।
Namaskar. I express deeply felt joy for being here with friends and dear friends from different countries and language backgrounds who have loved literature and who have lived by literature. A very warm welcome to India and at the event. It is a matter of great pleasure for me and pride to share my reflections on the theme, why do I write, for the occasion of this unique first time ever and largest literary festival of India, Unmesh. as a part of the celebration of our Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav. Sharing the dais with respected Shri Raghuveer Chaudhary ji, Jnanpith Awardee author of my own language, Gujarati, and with eminent co-speakers, makes me feel humbled and honored. Having Sitanshu sir, Kanchi bhai, Sanjay bhai, Anjani auntie, and other friends as audience for the sharing is extremely valuable for me. And I thank you one and all for being with me on this showering morning. Let me say that participation in this festival has become an unforgettable event in my life. I must thank everyone who visualized me here on this platform. My special and heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Rao and the Sahitya Akademi for this wonderful invitation. Now let me try to answer the question, why do I write? I write for pleasure. I like to express myself through literature. I feel catharsis when I write. I write to dedicate myself to a committed idea. Literature is the companion, and so on and so forth. We can probably add a few more reasons to write, but I decided to go beyond the obvious and travel deep into my consciousness to get hold of 3-4 dazzling, pearl-like, shining reasons to share with this august gathering in about 10 to 12 minutes in this beautiful city of Shimla, whose trees and breeze have captivated my soul. The first reason. Among all the questions the human mind can raise, the why question is the most difficult one. I became puzzled and perplexed because the question situated my act of writing in the positivist, modernist paradigm of the inevitability of the causality of every action. We have been conditioned to believe that every effort has to have a cause and a consequence. If we are unaware of them, we must find them through research and reflection. The question, why I write, is like asking someone why you breathe, or asking a cuckoo why she sings. Can a starry-eyed young girl answer the question why she fell in love with that most charming boy in her village? The reasons people do things are multidimensional and often paradoxical. At times, they are also concealed from their own selves. Sometimes we do things unaware. Writing to me is instinctive and not a deliberate, premeditated action. Writing happens to me from a spontaneous response to internal and external stimuli. So my first answer to the question is, I write because I have to, because I cannot not write. The second, psychologist Sigmund Freud suggested that human behavior was driven by two fundamental forces: life instincts and death instincts. I'm now tempted to probe my writing process further and understand how my writing is also animated by life and death instincts, or a mix of both. There is also an instinct of curiosity that makes me write. I want to explore my own self and the many other selves floating around me in this universe. Why I wish to explore in such a manner leads me to the third realization. The third, I have a longing. I long to reach out to others through literary depictions of experiences that I have occurred to my consciousness. By creating the rainbow of meanings in their consciousness, to become one with them at that moment. Friends, physical intimacy leads to the orgasm, which is a state of two bodies becoming one and experiencing extreme happiness. In the same way, through my creations, I want to have rational emotional intimacy leading to creative literary orgasm, the sense of oneness, unification with my readers. By doing so, I wish to address my basic instinct of reproducing myself, or let's say cloning my being just as humans do by giving physical birth to a child. I strongly desire to be alive in my writings and have my writings stay alive in them. Leading both of us, of course, to feel extremely happy by such well-meaning intimacy. I'm constantly yearning for a world in which I evolve to we and we grow to us. An unusual, non-dual existence. My consciousness should be enriched by becoming collective consciousness. Accustomed to my singular I, it should become plural. And in this way, I wish myself fulfilled without being alone. I write because I want to touch the hearts of many with my words. In one of our voices, we are all mingled. In one of our faces, we are all shining. The relentless pursuit of giving human meaning to the body, obtained through these efforts, keeps me alive. And I love to work towards this egalitarian expansion of bringing life to life. The climax, my poem describes this longing. The roots of the tree penetrated the soil. They clasped it, firmly attached to it and spread out within, like the veins branching out in the body. His aroused space moved inside me and got expanded. His and mine spaces fused into each other and bloomed into a flower on the tree. The fourth, I'm a human being. I know I have to live in a way that justifies being a human, but I am also a woman. The society around me and my body are constantly attached to the event called my being a woman. From this attachment, a new life of mine arises. Like it or not, friends, I have to go through many experiences just because I'm a woman. However, I know that the context of being a woman varies from person to person, as if I am just an object to use, enjoy, and satisfy expectations. Because I am a woman, I have to accept everything. Around me is a cage of traditions and customs. I have been gifted with since birth. It binds me. I see it. It stuns me. It challenges me and wears out my humanity. Just because I'm a woman. I write literature to make my point strongly, subtly, and freely. I want to live not only as a woman, but also as a human being. What bothers me with these convictions makes me write poetry. I like to fuse the different roles of being a woman. After that, I reach the form of who I am in pure form, a human being, and I like to be with me in such a state. I get delighted to see such a distilled existence of my being, and then my process of writing begins. I see my refined self in my creations. Writing is a way of asserting and realizing the freedom of my spirit. Nothing else remains but the only pure self. And friends, it's my festival. Let me say, Unmesh, I celebrate myself through my writings. Let me share a few lines from my poem Wall. Once upon a time, Ram had used stones to create a bridge. So likewise, I have placed those stones to build a wall. By placing stones, the wall has formed two worlds, heaven and hell. This wall made of stones will spread now from place to place in the water, and from water to life inside me. I am now in my heaven. In Gujarati, હું હવે મારા સ્વર્ગમાં. Summing up my voice, I write because I want to read something that is not written. I feel like assigning through my writing some meaning to the world seen as absurd by existentialists. When I write, I overcome the nagging sense of worthlessness and meaninglessness that society and philosophy have imposed on us. After I finish my writing, I realize I matter. And my existence will not end with my death. And I shall live forever in the anthroposphere through my words. I write because I want to create and recreate this world in all its beauty. Words have the most subtle power to impact and influence human consciousness. I wish to transmit my energy through these powerful words to the cosmic energy around me and become a creator of a world of tremendous meaning. A beautiful world in which all of us can live within and without, exploring the fullest possibility of being a fulfilled human. Finally, writing is the clang of my soul. If you read the conflict of ideas in my submission today, friends, I wholeheartedly accept it. I do live in conflict. I firmly believe in no conflict, no literature. French philosopher Descartes has argued, I think, therefore I am. And I have to say, I write, therefore I am. I'm sure you could have seen some sparkles in my eyes. I felt pure pleasure while sharing my reflections. Thank you one and all for the encouragement. Have a pleasant and engaging day ahead. Smile, shine and share. Namaste. Thank you very much.
धन्यवाद दर्शिनी जी, आप सबसे आगे थी इसलिए आपको ज्यादा समय मिला। वो लाभ सभी को नहीं मिलेगा क्योंकि हमें चेतावनी मिली है कि 12 बजे हमें समाप्त करना है। तो अच्छी बात है, आपने अपने बारे में भी कहा और डेकार्ट के बारे में भी कहा, और सीतांशी जी की छात्रा है तो आप सारे जगत के बारे में भी बोल सकती हैं। लेकिन अपने बारे में जो कहा वो बड़ा प्यारा था। और हम ये तय करें कि सबको 9 मिनट 9 मिनट आशुतोष चलेगा, तो 9 मिनट का नियम रखें आप। और ओम जी अगर ज्यादा हो तो मैं तो रोकूंगा नहीं। नहीं 9 मिनट वाला नियम आप पालन कीजिए उसका। नहीं वो तो 9 कहने पर 10 हो जाएगा। अच्छी बात है। अब नैन्सी जी, ठीक, मर्सी जी से निवेदन है कि आप बोले और कविता याद हो तो वो भी सुनाइए 9 मिनट के अंदर।
Good morning, everyone. Hope I am audible to you all. Thank you, Sahitya Academy, for inviting me to this prestigious event. Unmesh, and greetings to all who are sitting on the dais and my friends who are opposite to the dais. I'm Mercy Margaret from Hyderabad, a Telugu poet and a writer. Why do I write? I keep my talk in a very crispy, and I limit myself to the time. This has been the question I asked, introspected and deliberated myself many a times. My thoughts were in a conflict on such a question. Not surprising that it is also the same question posed to me by a number of others and readers. If someone asks me the question, it sounds like they're asking me to reason out why I breathe. Why I breathe. I feel as if the whole world resides within me. It feels it's divided into atoms within me. I also feel as though the world resides in me as a bunch of atoms, which ignites me continuously and finally culminate or eternalize into the beautiful world. This body is in continual dialogue with nature. I'm still trying to figure out whether it's me who is speaking to myself, or is it the nature that is provoking me and making me speak? I'm still in threshold to answer this. I also have an impression that some force of some metaphysical world is somehow surrounding me and making me speak. Means it's making me to write. It feels like I am stranded in the midst of thousands of scenes and visuals around me. It feels like I am hung between scenes playing out continually, reel after reel. It is as if each reel, like a wave of emotion, surrounds me and bursts out of me in the form of letters. When I'm alone, it feels like a whole new world is opening up around me, and thousands upon thousands of thoughts were ringing over my brain. Those thoughts travel across in different colors, shapes, people, context, and scenes. I feel like they are pleading me to sit down and write. I feel obliged to write because I also fear that these get stranded in my mind and don't escape. If I can't write, I write because I cannot carry fear. I cannot withstand new ideas that keep nagging at me continuously. The image of a middle-class woman on her scooter in the scorching heat, hiding her dear child with her pallu from the infectious sun. A man who is stretching his legs in impatience. The poor, hunchbacked old man cleaning and making fish ready in the market. And an old woman unwrapping the rope tied to his old best half and with his mouth unable to do it by hand. So they plight two twins, homeless, who do not know from where they are, but they are sleeping at the shelters of a bang. All of which was captured with the camera lens, that is my eyes, and the tsunami that formed in me when it reached my brain, from there into my heart, inexplicably. Something inside me is in a state of breathlessness unless the tsunami in the flushes out in the form of words. I write so I can breathe easily. I write because I experience, when I hear the helpless cries of the voiceless and helpless like me in my own society for my existence, and truly for my existence. I am Mercy Margaret, who has come from a Dalit background, who is a Dalit Christian from the place of Telangana. And I'm the first graduate from my family. I'm the first postgraduate from my family. I'm the first writer from my family and from my community, from where I've come. I want to write. I want to write to make my voice to be listened to the world, where I was ignored, where my community was ignored for more than hundreds and thousands of years. We were left out in the world. We are eliminated. I want to get the voice to be heard in front of few people. Writing is not a kind of a lavishness for me. Writing is for me is to wipe out the cries and tears from their eyes, who are still crying. Now I'm talking in front of you here. Some of my friends or family or some of my relatives may be working as scavengers there. Some of them, they may be sweeping the roads. And I write so as not to get suffocated with all those emotions. I don't want some Rohit Vemula to die in the universities. And I don't want someone to get suppressed in the community. I want to be the voice for the voiceless. I want my writings to be heard. I want my voice to be heard in the community because I also exist in the same land where the equality and, kind of a sovereignty is equal for everyone. I write because I want to let know my underprivileged next generation how I was treated, how I overcome, and how I travel from so far from there to this place to give my words. Poetry that magnetize both the depth and the possible. It has the ability to expand the aperture and extend the reach. We live so often in a damped down condition, obscured from ours and others. The sequesters and social convention, politeness and personal, timidity, self-fear or self-blindness, fatigue. To step into a poem is to agree to risk. Writing takes down all protections to see what steps forward. Poetry is a trick of language, and in which the writer is both magician and audience. Then I take poetry as my guard and shield, so that what I want to tell to the society, I take the help of poetry and I'm writing poetry. There is also a matter of connection. You can't write an image, a metaphor, a story, a phrase without learning a little further into the shade world, without recognizing that your supposed solitude is at every point of its perimeter touching some other. You can't read a poem, a good poem, at least by someone else, and not recognize in their experience your own face. So human needs to expand their boundaries. We must grow as world citizens, erasing the boundaries of mental and philosophical existence. Now the world is a hamlet in this age where cell phones and information technology are becoming more and more advanced. We are in a time of close contact, the people across geographical boundaries. So I write not to let the human narrow down to the depression, because literature stands as a bridge for the universal brotherhood and sisterhood. And thank you so much for this opportunity, and thanks for listening to me. Thank you. Have a good day.
धन्यवाद मर्सी जी। आपने श्रम की बात करते करते संवेदना व्यक्त की। मैं भी श्रमिक हूँ, किसान हूँ। अब तो काम पहले जितना नहीं होता, लेकिन काम बहुत किया है खेत में। तो गौरव की बात है कि श्रमजीवी वर्ग से आप आते हैं। तेलुगु साहित्य में महिला आंदोलन बहुत पहले हुआ था और महिला लेखन भी बड़ा समृद्ध है। तो धन्यवाद, आपने वो संवेदना व्यक्त की, इसके लिए भी धन्यवाद। और अन्वेषा जी।
Good morning, everyone. What do I speak after listening to struggles that we have only read in literature and probably seen in films? I can only hope that we have more mercies like you. Yeah, she certainly deserves a round of applause more than what we have given her. Respected chair and my fellow speakers and writers and readers who are sitting in the audience. I thank Sahitya Academy and Ministry of Culture for calling me here to speak on a topic that we as writers need to ponder upon every day. But I think more than the writers, the readers too now need to decide and ponder upon why they read and what they read. Friends, I started writing at the age of 12. And Chaudhary ji ne maa ka zikr kiya tha. I remember writing or rather scribbling something on a page and giving it to my mother, who was the first person who thought that what I wrote was a poem. I continued my writing from there. Friends and family were very happy that I write. My teachers took pride in telling everyone that they have a poet as a student. I started reciting poems in my school, but I never published my poems or any of my writings, and there was a reason for it. The reason being, I had the biggest critic and the biggest guide in my own house, and that was my father. My father was a writer, and more than a writer, he was a worker of Konkani. He was part of the agitation that led Konkani to become the official language of the state of Goa. And that's the reason why most of my poems often got rewritten. Many saw the door of the dustbin, many never got published. But I think there was one thing that he reinforced in me, and he taught me, he told me every time I wrote, and that maybe I might be writing for my joy, for my happiness, for the happiness of others, but do not forget that whatever you write is a contribution to your language and to universal language like Konkani. And that's the reason my poems always were criticized by him. I wrote again, I read a lot, and that's how my journey began. Friends, I come from the state of Goa, a state that is often misunderstood than understood in the right sense. I belong to the Konkani language, a language which is still fighting for its existence, a language that has fought several agitations and has reached this stage today. I'm speaking on a day which is recognized as Goa Revolution Day, Goa Kranti Dis. This is the day when Ramana Loya ignited the spark of liberation amongst Goans years back, and in 1961, Goa got liberated. In spite of Goa's liberation, there were people in Goa who thought that Goa is not an independent entity and that we should merge with Maharashtra and that we don't have any language of our own, that Marathi is our language. Thanks to the Swabhimani Goikar, I call them, people who thought that we have a different identity of our own. We fought for that identity, and the first referendum in India was held where Goans decided that we would be a separate state. In spite of getting that separate state, there were people who still thought that Konkani is not the language of our state and that we don't have a separate identity as far as language is concerned. So there was a huge agitation that began, and finally Konkani was recognized as the official language of Goa, and eventually Goa was recognized as a separate state. Until then, it was just a union territory. Friends, I belong to this legacy of Konkani, and that is the reason why I write, I need to write, and many of us need to write. And that is the reason most of the Konkani writers are known as fighters first and writers later, including the first Jnanpith Award winner in Konkani, Ravindra Bab Kelkar. Friends, my Goa also belongs to a state, to an identity which can boast of communal harmony, of its beautiful nature, of its culture, also about its Sushaga nature, which many of you may take as Goans being lazy. But we know how to lead life even after a hard-working day, and that's the reason we call ourselves Sushagat people. And apart from this, we can also boast of truthfulness and fearlessness. And the reason why I say this is because a man known as Damodar Mauzo, our dear Bhai, who won the Jnanpith this year, is speaking in a hall down there on the topic, what freedom means to him. And I think very aptly, he has every right to speak on this topic, because today he is moving around with police security because he has death threats lurking over him for speaking about communalism in our country, in our own state of Goa. And I think that is the reason why I need to write, because I have a legacy of people like Damodar Mauzo and Ravindra Bab Kelkar in my state. Friends, I think when I talk about truthfulness and fearlessness, we are also living in a country when whenever we speak truth, whenever we voice out our opinions, we are today countered by people who do not really exist. We are trolled by people, by fake identities that exist everywhere today, whether it is social media or elsewhere. And these are the people who are countering the right thoughts that we as writers put forth, the opinions that we articulate in the society. And I think together with struggling with them, together with arguing with them, we have to undertake a kind of positive trolling now. And I would like to give you a simple example, which has always inspired me to continue to write and voice out my opinion, which is called as something as India Love Project. People here who are on Instagram and Facebook would know about it. So this profile is a profile started by 3 contemporary journalists and people who write. And all that they do on this profile is they put a simple story, a love story about a couple who has got into intercaste, interreligion, or same-sex marriages. And all that this page wants to tell us that we have been celebrating differences for years together. It's nothing new that we are doing today. There are stories written by grandchildren about their grandparents who had eloped in somewhere like in 70s and 80s and who got into intercaste or interreligion marriages. I think we need to put forth such kind of positive stories in front of people, do this positive trolling so that we can tell each other that we have always celebrated the diversities that we live in. India is a diverse country, and I think we can sustain only if we celebrate these diversities that we all belong to. Friends, another important reason why I write is because I belong to a gender which has always been written very less about or always fantasized upon. There was a time we were told that we don't have brains, that we shouldn't get education. And we are living today in times when we are told that we can do everything and anything, that we are Ashtabhuja, that we are multitaskers, and that it's only women who can look after the home as well as outside and can do everything like a magician. Friends, there's nothing wrong in being multitaskers. I think we all should take pride in being multitaskers, but gender should not be a concept attached to it. Let me give you an example of my own state, Goa, whose food you all relish pretty well, and you must have heard about it. We have thousands of restaurants in Goa, and whether it is the 5 stars, 3 stars, or the local joints that are there in Goa, the chief chef in all these hotels is always a man. So I think if a man can cook for money, I'm sure the man can also cook at home. And that's the reason I think if we want to make a change in this society, if we want to tell the society that this is the reality, we need to write. And that is the reason I write. Friends, I would like to give you 2 examples of my own state where literature has made a huge difference. I head an organization called Konkani Bhasha Mandal, which is one of the oldest organizations in Goa, set up soon after Goa's liberation. And we have a platform called Chitrangi, which works for women as well as children. So we started a kind of a platform where we started to talk about the taboos attached to menstrual cycle of a woman. We started to go to colleges, we started to go to schools and speak with children about these different taboos that still don't leave us behind, whether it is my tiny state of Goa or elsewhere. And we made a huge difference. People started to speak about it. Both boys and girls started to speak about it. And moreover, they started to write about it through different blogs. And I'm sure we all know that today writing is not just about pen and paper. It's also about different blogs and videos and YouTube channels. So I started my own YouTube channel about myths and taboos relating to menstrual cycle, which is getting a huge response. The second example which I want to give is about agitation that has now started in Maharashtra, where most of the panchayats in Maharashtra have taken a resolution with respect to customs prevailing with regards to widows. Goa has followed suit, and we did a very small campaign which has started to gain response now, and thankfully most of the panchayats in Goa are also taking this resolution to ban these wrong customs and traditions attached to the widows. So I think we as writers can certainly make a difference if we start voicing out our opinions through our writings, through social media, or through blogs and videos. And I think this is the reason why I write and why I'm inspired to write most often. Before ending my talk, I would just like to share my thoughts on one area that is one of the most neglected areas which I work with, and that is children's literature. Under our organization, we have dedicated ourselves to the cause of children's literature. We create a lot of original children's literature, and we also translate a lot of children's literature. I have translated more than 20 stories in Konkani, and a lot of other writers are doing the same. I think we need to focus ourselves on children's literature, because for years together, we have fed our children with fantasies, cartoons, folk tales, but I think time has come when we have to rewrite all this. We have to feed, or rather let our children read about realities that they belong to. Our children see death around, they see communal disharmony around, they see terrorism around, they ask questions, and all that we tell them is this is nothing that you are supposed to read or listen to. But I think it's time we change this thought and give our children things that they see pretty often in front of them. Friends, I would like to end my talk with a small poem of mine, which goes as follows. आदनात बरी शिजिल्ली खतखतीत कविता घस्स करून ज्यांना पानार पडटा, आदनात बरी शिजिल्ली खतखतीत कविता घस्स करून ज्यांना पानार पडटा, त्यांना वासानच पोट भरता, कविता आपशीच रुचीक लागता. All that the poem says is that when we served a well-cooked poem or literature to others, the fragrance itself fills our stomach. All that I would like to say at this point is that let all of us have the abilities to serve well-cooked literature, well-cooked thoughts to all around, and that half-cooked thoughts and half-cooked literature remains in the backyard. Thank you so much.
धन्यवाद अन्वेषा जी. आपने केलकर का नाम नहीं लिया? लिया? तो रविंद्र केलकर. और बोरकर को जानती थी? ये उमाशंकर जी के मित्र थे दोनों. और ये जो आंदोलन चला कोंकणी की मान्यता का, वो बहुत लंबा चला और फिर साहित्य अकादमी ने इसको मान्यता दी. अन्वेषा जी ने तो कई विषयों पर बात की, आंदोलन पर भी बात की, और अंत में प्रकाशन पर. आप अच्छा बोलती हैं, सतत पढ़ती नहीं, लिखा नहीं है कुछ? अच्छा, तो धन्यवाद, आपने अच्छा किया. थोड़ा लंबा किया लेकिन अच्छा किया. अच्छा, अब आपकी बारी है सुनील जी. तो सुनील जी से निवेदन है.
Good morning, everyone. I kind of prepared a serious kind of speech. And one of my friend who knows better English than me, he filled it with some English literary jargons, which I wanted to read out. But after listening to these people, I had some other questions. I thought I would give some other kind of approach. When this question, why do I write? If I just wanted to use this stage as an opportunity, I thought, can I use this opportunity to tell about some of the forefathers of Tamil literature who didn't get to share this dais, like Pudumai Pittan? If someone asks Pudumai Pittan, why do you write? I mean, why do I write? He would say, why the hell that matters for you, man? When I stop writing, you can ask. Until I'm writing, I'm busy writing, you don't ask me. That would be his answer. If we could have asked Ashoka Mitran, another doyen of Tamil literature, he would say, I don't know, man. Don't ask me such questions. When I know, I'll come back and tell you. If you ask some of the contemporary greats like Jaimon would say, writing is like meditation to me. What meditation is for Buddha, writing is like that for me. If you ask Yuvan Chandrasekhar, another one of the great in the contemporary literature, he would say, okay, he would give each one of them different answer. You'll never find one single answer from him. So maybe should I do something quickie like that? That was the first thought which came to me when someone asks the question, why do I write? And then I thought, okay, I'll take at least I have to be honest. I have to be honest about my own creative world. So before wandering into the question of why I write, I just wanted to share how I began writing, because I thought there is some clue on what drives us to write. I wrote my first short story in 2012. The name of the story is Vasudevan. It's based on an experience from my college days when I was an internee, a trainee Ayurvedic doctor. So we were asked to treat a young man who had this, who was in a state of coma after suffering an head injury from a road accident. He was in a complete vegetative state. Okay. So the family, they have lost all the hope, and they just wanted to give a desperate try. So they came to us, they came to Ayurveda, and our professor, okay, let's give a try. And we went there, we brought this huge Ayurvedic massage table, and he had all these tubes, Ryle's tubes, and every tube he had all these tubes. And then we go daily, me and my friend, we used to go daily and do massage, enema, and you name it, what kind of therapies, whatever possible, we did to him. We even poured this decoctions through his nasogastric Ryle's tube. But inside we knew that it is nothing going to help. Yeah, it's not going to happen. He's not going to make up. But the family, they were hoping for a miracle. So this was happening for a period of time. And this protracted treatment and the Ayurvedic treatment is a little bit costly, and the reality began to intervene, and the treatment was stopped. And within few days, he died, as expected. I was expecting, but it shook me. His death shook me unexpectedly after his death. So I had this, I had this guilt. Not that he died, but maybe giving a false hope to the family. Maybe I thought, maybe if we hadn't done anything and gave that false hope, he could have lived, maybe in a vegetative state, yes, but he could have lived, continued to live. Then I used to get nightmares, memories, haunting memories of his, he had this craniotomy. You can palpate his brain. One part of skull will be missing. He'll be sticky. His legs and arms are like sticks. And he has a non-human groan occasionally. So I used to wake up in the night. It happened for years, for 2 or 3 years. It was like that. And one day I read Kafka's Metamorphosis. So in the Metamorphosis story, the Gregor Samsa guy, who is a very loud and dignified guy, who suddenly wakes up in one morning and he finds himself turned into an insect. And until yesterday, he was loved and he had a dignity of life, and slowly everything morphs. You find him, there will be first there'll pity, there's a pity, then there's apathy. And when he finds that people around him hate him, he leaves the world, he dies. So again, then I understood my Vasudevan. I understood him. Possessed by this insight, because he is no different from this Gregor Samsa. And possessed by this insight, I started writing in a feverish fervor. In a single sitting, I wrote my first short story. So then I found an answer to the question, why do I write? Because it liberated me of something. And it also gave me a quest. I do believe that, every writer has a quest. He's obsessed with the quest. The intensity of the quest decides and determines, and it feeds on the creative flame. How intense your creativity is, how intense is your question. They're directly proportional. That's what I thought. So I found my question. It's a very simple question, I would say. How are you valuing the life? How do you value a life? That's the one question which drove me. See what happened, this question led to other questions. So is there any other scale other than the utilitarian scale to value our lives? Is there, when does a man become useless from being useful? What's the point of transition? When does he become useless? When does a life become useless? And then, see, the entire history is all about celebrating the monarchs, the kings, the power, everything, the success. But what is this obsession with the literature? Why the literature is obsessed with the failed, the useless? Why is it so obsessed with the ordinary, not so successful? So these questions cropped up, and I followed it. And then I wrote my novel, which is about a childless couple who adopt, and they find that the girl is having autism and some challenges, and entirely it speaks about the challenges the notion of parenthood. So again, and then again on the second, after some days, after a few years, I again came to the original question: where do I write? So by the time I got acquainted, fortunately, with the ideas of Gandhi, so I read Gandhi. See, I found, to me, Gandhi is not a political leader or a father of nation or a reformist. To me, he's having I kind of have a personal kind of relationship with him. He's a moral philosopher to me, with whom I can engage, I can talk to him, I can agree with him, disagree with him. He's a very good guide, but he never allows you to stray. He's a keeper of conscience. So the problem is that he also showed me the painful half of other self, my shallowness, my pity, my pettiness, my hypocrisy, the everyday hypocrisy, which I was unaware until then. So that's this chasm of what you want to be and what you are. So I tried to reconcile that. Okay, I tried to reconcile by writing this chasm. And then when I completed my novel, and then the second short story was due. So the other influence I had, Carl Jung. I read Carl Jung and Aravinda Ghosh in a parallel way. They are pretty complementary. I found them very complementary. Jung says, to know thyself, know thy darkness. Aravinda also says something similar. As you ascend, so you descend. So again, as I was watching Sonal Mansingh-ji's troupe performing on the other day, I thought this idea that to coexist with the darkness, not conquering or vanquishing the darkness. How do you coexist with the darkness? We can coexist with the darkness only by becoming aware of it. We cannot vanquish the darkness. So when we go deep inside, we'll be shocked to see the darkness, which the Jung calls as shadow. Shadow. Writing is a process to me which showed me my shadow part. And one interesting phenomenon I found that probably writing is the safest, perhaps the best method to express one's innate darkness that lies dormant. I think as a society, it is important that we confront our innate darkness, because that's how we come to term with it. That's how we recognize and be aware of it. And there is no cure, you cannot extinguish. But once you are aware, then things are under control. So to me, I imagine myself akin to an 18th century European explorer who went in search of something. Everything you found, every discovery is an exciting thing. So writing is very similar to that European explorer. You have that explorer spirit. You explore yourself, you explore the world, you explore the people. And every tiny discovery that gives a spark of happiness to you. Maybe that might have been already uncovered, but it is something new to me. So this became a kind of journey to me. And one other thing, Francis Fukuyama tells about this craving for thymos. Thymos means recognition, the craving for recognition. As we think about that, when we operate in literature, we all know that at least in India, we don't have enough recognition. As Raghubir Chaudhary sir was telling in the earlier, we don't have enough money. Of course, that's not our prime drive. But thymos of a different kind. I would say, in this manner, I would imagine myself as a classist, because to seek immortality. That's one fundamental impulse which a writer has. So in Roberto Bolaño's Savage Detectives, the Arturo Bolaño and his other friend, they will be searching a writer who was a former writer who gets lost, and they'll be going after her, and they'll find her. She'll be all alone, writing all alone. She has no urge to publish, she has no urge to express, but she'll be writing volumes and volumes of diaries will be there. Maybe this is a very romantic notion of writing, but I'm still, in my heart, I believe this kind of thing. Because in Tamil, I have an example. We have a writer called Pa Singar. He wrote just two novels. Kadalukku and Poilile Orthoni. During his time, he was not recognized. He had a lonely death. He had a bitter life. He stopped writing. He was working in some newspaper. Nobody knew him. But after his death, his successors resurrected him. He came back to life. Now his works are regarded as a modern Tamil classic. Any writer who wants to write in Tamil, they must pass through him. They must be aware of him. So maybe you have this alchemical methods, or the tantric meditation, or the philosopher's stones, or the nectar, or something for being immortal. All these attempts are there, but there is another easier and credible way to be immortal, to be a writer. I see him as an example. I want to outlive my life, outlive my days. I want to live maybe a 10-year, a decade, maybe a centennial, maybe fortunate enough 1,000 years. So that is one other drive which keeps me in this sphere. Lastly, there is one Panchatantra story about a Brahma Rakshas with a tender foot who sits over a Brahman, and he directs him to every place. The Brahman desperately wants to get rid of this Brahma Rakshas. I want to imagine writing as a kind of Brahma Rakshas who sits over your shoulders and directs you. He takes control of you. But the difference is that I desperately pray and seek that he doesn't ever forsake me. He doesn't ever leave me. He always, this I have this Stockholm syndrome with Brahma Rakshas, and let him forever possess me. Thank you.
आइए सुनील जी। सुनील जी ने अपने बारे में कम बातें की और अपने साहित्य की जो परंपरा है उसमें जो विशिष्ट साहित्यकार हैं उनकी बात की और गांधी जी और श्री अरविंद की बात की। तो आप बहुत मेहनत कर रहे हैं, पढ़ रहे हैं और लिख रहे हैं, तो आपको विशेष शुभकामनाएं काम करने के लिए। अब आशुतोष अंत में बोलना है अभी? नहीं नहीं नहीं, आप बोलिए अभी। हाँ,
So before I start speaking, I'll express my profound gratitude to what Mercy Margaret had said. She gave not only me my voice, but I'm sure that many others a collective voice. I can say with all intensity, with all honesty, that there's very little that I can add after whatever she has spoken. But nevertheless, because I have been invited here, let me try. I write in two languages, Hindi and English. I have published books and articles and a lot of things in both the languages. I write in various forms of prose, from journalism, investigative reporting, fiction, literary criticism, travelogue, memoir, etc. So this question, why do I write, which is an eternal question for a writer, takes even more tormenting form for me, because it's a question that you face daily. It doesn't have any settled answer. The realization about the transformation of your being into a writer comes earlier, but why one gets drawn to writing and why one begins chasing characters and ideas on paper, there is no settled answer for it. Why among all the vocations, I chose this intensely solitary exercise where I am my own audience, my own witness, my own prosecutor, my own defendant, and my own judge. Let me try to give some answers to these questions. We are often told that writing, that we live just once. But writing is an antithesis to this proposition. Life might have come with just one draft, but a writer is bestowed with an innate ability, authority to create multiple drafts and live infinite lives. So my first answer is to myself, I write because my hunger for life is never quenched by what is called the first draft of life. I write to live the infinite lives that could have been mine, but that were not. Let me give an inner instance of the working of this writerly cosmos. How does it work? हम आखिर कैसे किसी विधा पर आते हैं, जैसे मैंने तमाम विधाओं की अभी बात की थी. So I have written a book called The Death Script, मृत्यु कथा, दोनों हिंदी अंग्रेजी में. So this book is about, well, I have lived as a journalist in Central Indian Forest for several years and extensively reported on the Naxal insurgency, the battle that is being between the Indian security forces and the Naxal insurgents. Several years ago, I began writing this book. So when I began, it was a first-person memoir, a diary. After a year or two, I realized, no, the form in which the emotions of this battle were recorded within me, the form of a diary is not suitable for that. I discarded it. I then began writing a travelogue out of it. Again, after a year or two, having written some voluminous this travelogue, I realized कि नहीं यार, बात नहीं बन रही है. I need another form. I then switched to a novel. And you wouldn't believe, I wrote some 40,000 words of this novel and got several extracts published here and there. I had a publisher, major publisher ready. And yet after a couple of years, I realized, this doesn't want even a novel. I need to have something else as well. Then eventually, after 7 years of struggle, I came to a form, or I would say the form reached me, that is an experimental form in which I am playing with prose. It's part diary, part novel, part, you can say it an essay also. So then it became what the book, what is now called as the Death Script of Mrityu Katha. So did I choose the writing or form? Perhaps not. It came and possessed me. Number two. There's another aspect of this question, the nature of authorship, which is related to what I had just said. The elusive creative power that conjures up a cosmos of characters and their inner selves. I began my writing life as a fiction writer in my early teens and was baffled by this whole idea that what is this innate ability? What is that spark? From where is it arriving? Several years later, when I began my journalistic writings, I had another question. What is the source of this journalistic narrative? And then what I'm going to share here now, that's very significant. I soon realized that I had two selves, writerly selves. Those of you who have read Stephen Zweig's great novel, The Royal Game, in which a person plays chess with his own opponent. So he divides himself, the protagonist of the short story, into two parts, black as well as white. So he plays chess with his own self. The black part makes a move and the white responds. So I then realized that my writerly self had been divided into these two neat selves, one a journalistic, another a fiction writer. And now I want to here give an instance. Those who write in one form, they know, mostly fiction, they know, that जब भी आप कहीं से गुजर रहे होते हैं तो अक्सर आप जो कुछ हो रहा है, you want to absorb it, assimilate it as a fiction for your forthcoming any fictional piece. But imagine if you have not one, if you have not two, if you have multiple writerly selves, if you are writing in multiple forms, then you will realize that all these selves of yours, at least in my case, they are in a constant and treacherous battle within you. I mean, they want to appropriate, one self want to appropriate this experience for the form in which that self is experimenting with. The another self would like to appropriate that particular emotion for its own. So there's a constant tussle between these two. So why do I write? Just to witness this fascinating tussle, the conflict within me. I don't know whether I'm making sense here, but this torment that you undergo, the torment of a writer and torment of a writer who is writing in various forms, that these are remarkably different situations, because I can say this with some authority because I have undergone both the situations. Now the question is this, that besides the adventure of this written word, which it brings to me, it also brings a lot of self-doubt, grief, and even ruin. Because then you are tormented by the doubt about the veracity of your words. That since you perceive and receive this world through your imperfect senses, then how can you trust your own word? Now, in such moment, I remember my ancestors. There are many of them, but here I would like to recall Umberto Eco's the protagonist in The Name of the Rose, the great sentence when he says, "The truth, if not seized by doubt, assumes the form of the devil." So writing in that sense is an exercise that pushes you to an eternal self-doubt. I write then to feel questioned, to feel assaulted. I write so that I never forget my own defeats, my own humiliations, so that I always face before me my own betrayals, my own treacheries. I write to become a little bit more considerate and more compassionate. I write, as she just rightly said, so that I can share some of my sorrows and record some of other sorrows. Thank you so much.
धन्यवाद आशुतोष, आप प्रोफेसर हो जाइए, बहुत अच्छा बोलते हैं, लेकिन ये 3 बार लिखना, वो तो फिर क्या लिखेंगे जीवन भर में, एक फॉर्म दूसरा फॉर्म। लेकिन ये सब महत्वपूर्ण बातें हैं। कोई सर्जक इस तरह से काम करता है, और जंगल में भी रहे आप, कई वर्ष रहे, हमारा कांजी भी कल कुछ बता रहा था, तो ये तो अच्छी बात है जंगल में रहना, वाल्मीकि भी वहीं रहे थे। लेकिन ये ज्यादा सोचना, ये मुझे ज्यादा जोखिम लगता है। अज्ञे जी हिंदी के बड़े साहित्यकार थे, इन्होंने कहा है कि जानना अलग हो जाना है, जानना अलग हो जाना है। संवेदना से आप जुड़ते हैं, आप देखते हैं और एकरूप हो जाते हैं, प्रेम करने लगते हैं, वो एक बात है। और आप विश्लेषण करते हैं, अलग हो जाते हैं, बहुत तटस्थ हो जाते हैं। फिर आप जंगल में न हो और कमरे में हो तो भी, अगर आप साहित्यकार कलाकार हैं तो वहां भी फिर अज्ञे जी की पंक्ति है, वही एकांत सच्चा है जिसे सब छू सके, वही एकांत सच्चा है जिसे सब छू सके। हमारे एकांत में सभी का समावेश हो, सभी की उपस्थिति हो, ये भी एक आदर्श है। तो दोनों चीजें हैं, जंगल में घूमना, आदिवासी विस्तार में घूमना, पुराने साहित्य को पढ़ना, सभी अलग अलग ढंग से बात करते हैं और बड़ा रसप्रद काम चलता है। अब जिनका नाम सबसे पहले छपा है इसमें, वो हिंदी के साहित्यकार है अंकित जी। हाँ, बताओ।
अमूमन हम भारतीय भाषाओं में जो लिखते हैं वो तमाम अन्य भाषाओं को पढ़ते भी हैं। अंग्रेजी के साथ ऐसा नहीं है, वो इस अहंकार में रहती है कि अंग्रेजी के अलावा और कम भाषाओं को पढ़ेगी। लेकिन मेरा अनुभव है कि बड़ी बंगाली, उड़िया, तेलुगु इत्यादि में लिखने वाले दूसरी भाषाओं को भी अधिक पढ़ते हैं। लेकिन ऐसा कम होता है कि जब कोई एक भाषा में काम करने वाला किसी दूसरी भाषा के लेखक पर किताब लिख दे, और वही बहुत कम उम्र में। जो व्यक्ति आपके सामने खड़े हैं, इन्होंने यू आर अनंत मूर्ति पर किताब लिखी है, छपी भी है। मेरे अपनी समझ से अनंत मूर्ति पर कन्नड़ के अलावा भारत की किसी अन्य भाषा में मुझे नहीं लगता कोई किताब लिखी गई होगी, एकमात्र हमारे हिंदी लेखक ने लिखी है।
कन्नड़ जानते हैं आप? कन्नड़ जानते हैं? नहीं, ये आप जानते हैं कन्नड़?
मैंने हिंदी में पीएचडी किया सर अनंत मूर्ति पे।
नहीं तो कन्नड़ भाषा
नहीं,
जाननी
कन्नड़
चाहिए
नहीं
ना। हाँ, ठीक है, अच्छा, अच्छी बात है। दूसरी किताब लिखे हैं तब भाषा को जानकर लिखना।
जी सर। संस्कृति मंत्रालय, भारत सरकार, साहित्य अकादमी के इस बैनर तले मुझे बात करनी है, मैं क्यों लिखता हूँ। मैं इस सवाल पे आने से पहले कि मैं क्यों लिखता हूँ, मैं ये सवाल करता हूँ कि नदियां समुद्र में क्यों गिरती हैं, पेड़ों को पत्ते क्यों आते हैं, हवाएं क्यों चलती हैं, हम सांस क्यों लेते हैं। इन सारे सवालों के ठीक ठीक उत्तर देना किसी के बूते के बस की बात नहीं है। फिर भी मैं क्यों लिखता हूँ, इस सवाल का उत्तर देने के लिए मैं प्राचीनतम लेखक महर्षि वाल्मीकि के उस प्रथम श्लोक तक आता हूँ, जिसमें वो कहते हैं, मां निषाद प्रतिष्ठाम त्वम शाश्वत मना यत् क्रोच मिथुनादि विद्यते कामोहितम। दरअसल हमारे किसी भी भाषा के सबसे प्राचीनतम लेखक महर्षि वाल्मीकि जिस बहेलिये को श्राप दे रहे हैं, महर्षि वाल्मीकि ऐसे बहेलियों को अपने समय में पहचान लेते हैं और उनको तमाम उम्र श्रापित रहने का श्राप देते हैं। क्या जो आज हम लिख रहे हैं, क्या अपने समय में ऐसे बहेलियों को पहचानने के लिए प्रतिबद्ध हैं? इस तरह के सवाल मुझे मेरे लेखन के प्रति प्रतिबद्ध करते हैं और मैं कोशिश करता हूं कि मैं जो लिख रहा हूं उसमें अपने समय के ऐसे बहेलियों को पहचान लूं। मैं अपने लेखन के बारे में आपको एक जानकारी दूं कि मैं क्रिटिसिज्म लिखता हूं, आलोचना लिखता हूं। तो आलोचना लिखते हुए जो पहला सवाल मेरे दिमाग में आता है वो ये है कि क्या एक आलोचक के भाग्य में ऐसी कितनी किताबें होती हैं जो उस तक पहुंचती हैं, और ऐसी कितनी पंक्तियां हैं जिनके नीचे वो उंगली रख देता है और वो पंक्तियां हम सब सामाजिकों की हो जाती हैं। बहुत कम किताबें आलोचक के हिस्से आती हैं। उन किताबों से हम अपने दौर की सभ्यता की समीक्षा करने की कोशिश करते हैं और उन्हें पहचानने की कोशिश करते हैं जो एक खास समुदाय को पीछे रख देती हैं। मैं उस समुदाय का प्रतिनिधि बनकर उन के विषयों को सामने लाने की कोशिश करता हूं। मैं अज्ञे की एक कविता के सहारे अपनी बात आगे रखूंगा। अज्ञे की एक कविता है, जो पुल बनाएंगे वे अनिवार्यतः पीछे रह जाएंगी, विजयी होंगे राम सेनाएं गुजरेंगी, इतिहास में इनके निर्माता बंदर कहलाएंगे। आप अपने पूरे साहित्यिक इतिहास को पढ़ेंगे तो देखेंगे कि जो निर्माण करता है वो अंततः बंदर ही कहलाए गए हैं। मैं अपने लेखन से ऐसे पीछे धकेल दिए गए लोगों को सामने लाने की कोशिश करता हूं। मैं ये सवाल करता हूं कि फुटपाथ पे सोने वाला आदमी महल में सोने वाले आदमी से किस प्रकार भिन्न है? क्या इसमें किसी किस्मत, किसी पूर्व कर्म का योग है, या ये कोई षड्यंत्र है जो उसको फुटपाथ पर सोने के लिए मजबूर कर देता है? मेरा लेखन इस बात को समझने के लिए है। मेरा लेखन बहुभाषिकता, बहुसंस्कृति और बहुरंगी भारतीय अनेकता को बचाने के लिए है। आज हम देख रहे हैं कि एक खास किस्म का रंग सब पर तारीख करने की कोशिश की जा रही है। मैं उस रंग के बीच दूसरे रंगों को बचाने के लिए प्रतिबद्ध हूं। मेरा लेखन मुक्तिबोध के उस सवाल से शुरू होता है जिसमें वो कहते हैं कि तोड़ने ही होंगे मठ और गढ़ सब, जाना होगा दुर्गम पहाड़ों के उस पार, एक तनी हुई रस्सी पर जहां मौत का भी खतरा है। मैं अभिव्यक्ति के खतरे उठाने की बात करता हूं। मैं अपने लेखन से समझने की कोशिश करता हूं कि क्या इस अनेकता में एकता वाले भारत को इस आधुनिक समय के बहुआयामी सच वाले युग में कोई खतरा तो नहीं है। वो खतरा यदि है तो वो किन लोगों के द्वारा पैदा किया जा रहा है? जिस सच्चाई को हमारे सामने लगातार पेश करने की कोशिश की जा रही है एक नए क्लेवर में, वो सच्चाई है भी या उसको सच्चाई बनाकर पेश किया जा रहा है? आप सब लेखक हैं, मेरे इस रूपक को समझ रहे होंगे कि मैं क्या कहना चाहता हूं। इसको यूं सच सच कह देना भी आज खतरे से खाली नहीं है। मैं अपने लेखन से इस विषय को समझने की कोशिश करता हूं कि क्या भारत जिस अनेकता में एकता के सूत्र से बनाया गया था उसमें अनेकता के क्या मायने थे? क्या वह अनेकता क्षेत्रों से आती थी, भाषा से आती थी, रंग से आती थी, लिंग से आती थी? आज डाइस पे हम 8 लोग हैं जिसमें 4 पुरुष 4 महिलाएं हैं। यदि इनमें एक LGBT ग्रुप से होता तो उस अनेकता को आप यहाँ भी देख सकते थे। मैं ऐसी अनेकता को बचाने के लिए लिखता हूँ और मैं अपनी बात को बिल्कुल थोड़े समय में समाप्त करूंगा। मैं लिखता हूँ क्योंकि मेरे पीछे वो अलक्षित लोग
बड़ी गंभीर बातें की अंकित जी आपने, और ये भारत की समकालीन समस्या है, प्रजा को लेकर, धर्म को लेकर, उसको भी आपने छूने का प्रयत्न किया, तो अच्छी बात है। और कोई व्यवसाय करते हैं, पढ़ते हैं अभी? अच्छा, आप शिक्षक हैं, अच्छी बात है। तो धन्यवाद अंकित जी। अनंत मूर्ति हमारे मित्र थे और इन पर आपने काम किया है, खुशी की बात है। अब अंत में नवनीता जी ऐसे बोलना चाहिए, आइए बोलिए।
A very good afternoon to the august gathering here, to the respected chairperson, my eminent panelists. Being the last speaker, I don't know whether it's good, whether it's bad. You have heard so much about explorations regarding why do I write. Each of us have different reasons. And here I am with my own idea, with my own explorations. I must say, I must refer to Anvesha, who just spoke about the well-cooked food. I don't know whether what I'm going to serve can be called a well-cooked food, because as many times I kept on thinking of this question, why do I write? Different answers kept coming, different answers. Each time I had something to add, something to subtract. I was wondering about the writerly self. And I thought I can divide it into 3 parts, maybe, if that's possible. Of course, each part overlaps the other. The creative, the critical, and somewhere in between, the translator. And all the selves somewhere are a result of the readerly self, of the self that lives in this world with all its various contours of life. I would like to begin with a quote from Toni Morrison, and she says in an interview, "There are all sorts of ways people try to stay connected, try not to live in hate. Religion may be one of them. But for me, the central thing is writing, the art itself, putting my intelligence and my humanity to the best possible use, and I get better because I am doing it. The writing teaches me that I can't just reach some little plateau and that's it. This is the place. I can't say that this is the place that I have reached. It is always a search," unquote. This quotation, at many levels, it answers my response to the question of why do I write? The central idea being to stay connected. To be connected means not to live in isolation, and today we have learned the hard way of how punishing that entire concept of isolation can be. To connect, I have always felt the most important reason to write, to connect minds, thoughts, and of course, cultures. It's from this perspective, this point of connecting cultures, that I would like to approach my explorations of the reason to write. And while I explore, I would be focusing primarily on the translator self and the creative self. And there's a reason as well. As I was pondering over the question, I was not sure, I'm still not sure whether I can do justice to it. So what I'm going to do is to lay bare my thoughts in front of you.
This brings to the question another thing, that why, like one of the most obvious answer of the question would be, why do I write, would be to express myself. But then again, I start questioning that why do I even have the need to express myself? It's not just that. Act of writing involves something much more. It's also the idea that my expressions would be read by the readers, as another of my eminent panelists, Sunil ji, had already talked about it. So that there would always be readers, and that would probably complete the cycle that begins with my thinking of writing. The act of writing or any expression, I think, is deeply personal, or at least to start thinking of why I am writing is deeply personal. It's the finished creation that goes out to the world, reaches the public, a movement from the private to the public sphere. But the decision itself, the need that we feel, that is something deeply personal. And at the same time, it's not just personal, because I feel that the need to write, the medium of expression, the choice of language, all these are decided by a very interesting but a very complex interplay of various social and personal factors. And as I started thinking of this topic, I knew this is going to be a subjective exploration, also talking about the society in which I grew up. Growing up in a multilingual but very close community in a very small township located somewhere in Jharkhand, it had exposed me to diverse cultures and their interesting practices from a very early age. That place was like a microcosm, and where a large number of linguistic communities had congregated, bringing along their cultures, their own stories, their own traditions, yet they were living together. The early exposure to this kind of a community had made me conscious not just the linguistic diversities, but also the fact that each of these languages holds the key to a unique set of cultural practices. That, and then later coupled with my training in literature, made me realize the extremely important need to translate. I, as a member of a particular linguistic community with access to more than one language, felt the need to act as an ambassador, maybe as a point of connection between two cultures, bringing together the communities. In the polyphonic society that I had grown up, I could also feel the gap. The gap was both linguistic and cultural. It was the kind of gap that led to a sense of othering, and I'm using the word othering within quotes, because this is the kind of othering that comes from not understanding your other because you do not have an access to. This gap needs to be bridged. And this understanding of the other can lead to a kinship. This kinship can be forged only by a connection, communication. And I thought with my access to more than one language, could at least try and build that connection. I was reminded of a thought by Anthony Burgess, and he says the translation is not a matter of words only, it's a matter of making intelligible a whole culture. It was a similar intention that provoked me to translate. This again brings me to the question that what am I expressing? Because initially at the beginning of my talk, I said that we write to express. So what am I expressing in translation? Because I'm writing someone else's word in some other language. But if one of the again, I think that I am translating in order to express myself. The idea of expressing comes or is revealed through the works that I choose to translate. The choice itself is also very significant. What do I choose to translate is because that is something that I feel connected to, that's something that I believe in and that I also identify with. It's a personal choice. My first full-length work of translation was A Bengali Lady in England, which is a travelogue written by a 19th century woman, Krishna Bhavini Das. The text was published in 1885. And I, sitting in a post-colonial, postmodern India, a contemporary woman, could still connect with that 20-year-old Bengali lady in 1880s going to England. Because she talks about women's education, she talks about women's freedom, she talks about the need to uplift the women, and she is also extremely critical. She's not all admiration for England, she is both critical as well as has this admiration for the country where she is visiting. Standing separated by time and space, I identified with her so much that I was compelled to translate it. Another thing that's important to mention here, that it's the woman in me that most of the time forces or decides what I'm going to write. Probably today I can't say that we've been living a life as marginalized as Krishna Bhavini did, but definitely as a woman at both collective and individual level, we know there are miles and miles and miles to go. My next translation project, which has been published, which is a very contemporary work by a male journalist. Again, I took the work because of a woman connection, because this is on Chambal, and the journalist talks about the women Baghis. He talks about, of course, most of the greater part of the book is talking about the male Baghis, but there is a very important section on women Baghis, and which I felt was very important. These are the voices that we need to reach out to the world. Language has fascinated me. I have lived between languages. It's been in that liminal space where I have always existed. And I just read a very short poem of mine because I think this is what brings out the complexities that I feel when I am talking in terms of translation, when I'm talking in terms of language. So, in a growing warfield of languages, my body turns multilingual and lives in translated spaces. On a sleepy afternoon, it breaks down the imperialism of the everyday prose and metamorphoses into cottony clouds floating high up in infinite, cooing love songs in a new parlance. Then it becomes a sea, hiding in its deepest depth stories of desires prohibited in arid land. With the chiming of a bell, in the music of a waiting conch, it ushers a whole new carnival. And when it turns into a forest, whispering winds chants the magic mantra, the ancient abracadabra of the world before Babel, and valleys, mountains, wetlands sparkles in a million blooms. Nothing gets lost in translation as I pick up each touch that metamorphosis incurs and weave them tight into my skin. My multilingual self celebrates freedom of the warring tongue. As a writer, I think of myself at multiple selves. So while translation gives me a groundedness, I also express myself through poetry and short stories. Translation makes me follow a certain trajectory, a trajectory that has already been decided. But creative writing liberates me, and I need both these selves because it's my way of negotiating with the world, expressing my feeling. And I feel that there is a significant thought, a significant need for each of us to be able to express our thoughts, to contribute what we are, how we think, because we all are finally a product of the society, of the history, the times that we are living now, the times that have gone by. And finally, I must say before I finish that I write to feel connected, to connect with the larger world that's there. Thank you so much.
धन्यवाद नवनीता जी। ये बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण कार्य है अनुवाद का, जो साहित्य अकादमी दशकों से कर रही है। एक जमाने में PEN नामक संस्था थी, अंतरराष्ट्रीय संस्था थी, वो इतने बड़े सम्मेलन करती थी। फिर बीच में नेशनल बुक ट्रस्ट ने भी बहुत काम किया, और अनुवाद का काम तो आज भी उसके द्वारा होता है। लेकिन साहित्य अकादमी की विशेषता यह है कि ये नए लेखकों के लिए कार्य शिविरों का आयोजन भी करती है, और हर एक शिविर में 3-4 भाषा के लेखक होते हैं। इसके अलावा नए लेखकों के संकलन भी अकादमी प्रकाशित करती है। तो ये अकादमी ने आयोजन किया और बहुत महत्वपूर्ण था, महत्वाकांक्षी था, ज्यादा महत्वाकांक्षी था। जगह तो अच्छी मिली। एक जमाने में यहाँ शासन का काम होता था, अब संस्कृति का काम होता है। तो ये शायद इसकी स्थापना का ये अच्छा फल है कि साहित्य अकादमी और सांस्कृतिक विभाग और यहाँ की सरकार सभी ने मिलकर ये आयोजन किया, और कई लेखक आपस में मिले भी होंगे, एक दूसरे को सुना भी होगा। मैं आज तक यानी 3 दिन से किसी न किसी गोष्ठी में बैठा हूं और कुछ न कुछ सुनने को, जानने को मिला है। कल मौखिक महाकाव्यों की बात थी, तो आप में से कई लोगों ने जिक्र किया हमारे प्राचीन साहित्य का अध्ययन मौखिक परंपरा में कैसे है, क्या परिवर्तन हुआ है और क्या सांस्कृतिक संदेश आता है। वो कल अच्छी तरह से बातें हुई। कल कवियों को सुना, सरकार साहब की उपस्थिति में 8-9 भाषा के कवि थे, और एक उम्मीद जगती है नए लोग कितना अच्छा लिखते हैं। और ये आप सब 10 ही मिनट में आशुतोष ज्यादा बोलना चाहिए था, बोलना आता है तो, लेकिन कम बोला हो। लेकिन सभी ने अपनी बात की, और किसी दूसरे की बात पसंद आई तो उसकी भी बात की। रविन्द्रनाथ ने कालिदास के विषय में कहा है, जीवन मंथन विष निजे कोरिपान, अमृत जो उठे छेलो करीगे छोदान। जीवन के मंथन में से जो विष निकला उसका आपने स्वयं पान किया, और जो अमृत निकला उसका सभी को दान दिया। तो रविन्द्रनाथ कालिदास को स्वीकार करते हैं, और रविन्द्रनाथ से कौन प्रभावित नहीं है। रविन्द्रनाथ, एक बार शरद चंद्र से किसी ने कहा कि हम तो आपको पढ़ते हैं तो बहुत अच्छा लगता है, लेकिन रविन्द्रनाथ जरा कठिन। तो शरद चंद्र ने क्या कहा कि मैं आपके लिए लिखता हूं और रविन्द्रनाथ मेरे लिए लिखते हैं। तो ये 2 वर्ग तो रहेंगे। कुछ लेखकों के लेखक होते हैं, जैसे हमारे सितांशु है, वो कवियों के कवि हैं, ऐसा मैंने उनके बारे में लिखा भी है। लेकिन ये सभी जीवन के विविध प्रश्नों से जुड़े हैं। अपनी बातें कम की, इन्होंने साहित्य समाज की बातें ज्यादा की, अपनी बातें भी की होती तो अच्छा है, लेकिन कुछ न कुछ बातें आई, तो इस प्रकार का आयोजन हुआ। अंत में मैं देश के एक बड़े कवि की 2 पंक्तियां आपको सुनाऊं। उसमें कहते हैं, इसमें तू कौन है, आप कल्पना कीजिए कि मेरी न्यूनता, मेरी कमजोरी से तुझे एतराज नहीं, लेकिन तेरी पूर्णता मुझे छू गई। अब गुजराती समझ में आएगा। मारी न्यूनता न नड़ी तने, तारी पूर्णता गई अड़ी मने। मारी न्यूनता न नड़ी तने, तारी पूर्णता गई अड़ी मने। तो ये पूर्ण क्या है, इसको परमेश्वर कहिए, यह टोटल एग्जिस्टेंस है ऑफ द यूनिवर्स। सारा विश्व है जो पूर्ण है। हम तो पूर्ण नहीं है, हम अधूरे हैं, और अधूरापन हमारा जो है उसे किसी न किसी तरह से पूर्ण करने के लिए हम शब्द का सहयोग चाहते हैं, और शब्द हमें कहीं से कहीं ले जाएगा। माशंकर ने यह भी कहा है, शब्द मुझे कहां से कहां ले गया। तो एक आदिवासी विस्तार के गांव में उमाशंकर पैदा हुए और कितना बड़ा, कितनी भाषाओं में भी काम किया, और इनको भी हम भविष्य में ज्यादा पढ़ेंगे। अनंत मूर्ति की बात की, मुझे अच्छा लगा। तो हमारे समाज के बारे में उन्होंने चिंता व्यक्त की है। ये ब्राह्मण थे और शायद ईसाई से शादी की थी और बड़ा विरोध था, लेकिन वो अपने ढंग से काम करते रहे, जिसे हम कहते हैं ना असांप्रदायिक, ऐसा व्यक्तित्व उनका था। वो भी अंग्रेजी के अध्यापक थे और अच्छा बोलते थे। एक पुस्तक मैंने पढ़ी थी सीता के बारे में, सीता एक विद्रोह, तो उसमें ये जानकारी मिली कि केरला में जो ईसाई महिलाएं होती हैं वो अपनी बेटी से कहती हैं कि तुम सीता जैसी बनो। एक ईसाई माता बेटी से कहते हैं कि तुम सीता जैसी बनो। तो क्या है सीता? वाल्मीकि तो कहते हैं कि सीता ही मुख्य है हमारे लिए, राम नहीं, लेकिन सीता वाल्मीकि का कहना है। और उसी परंपरा को सामान्य मनुष्य तक ले जाने के लिए तुलसीदास ने सीता का विशेष गौरव किया। और ग्रियर्सन ने तो कहा था कि बुद्धदेव के बाद तुलसीदास भारत के सभी लोग सबसे बड़े लोकनायक थे। लोकनायक की बात छोड़िए, लेकिन लोकनायक तो जेपी भी थे और हम बहुत आदर से उनको याद करते हैं। तो ये साहित्य पहुंचता है, साहित्य पहुंचकर एक लोकनायक का काम करता है। और रविन्द्रनाथ की तो हमें बहुत आवश्यकता है। आज भी रविन्द्रनाथ को जितना ज्यादा पढ़े, गोरा पढ़कर उसमें से हम संदेश प्राप्त करें। उनका जो उपन्यास है गोरा, महान उपन्यास है। अज्ञे जी ने उसका हिंदी अनुवाद किया है। तो ऐसे महान साहित्यकार है, उनसे हम कुछ न कुछ प्राप्त करें और अपनी ओर से थोड़ा बहुत जो कुछ हो। इन सभी मित्रों को, सभी नौजवान है, सभी कर्मशील है, बड़े अच्छे हैं, सभी ने समय पर पूरा किया। तो इन शब्दों के साथ आप सबको प्रणाम करके धन्यवाद देता हूँ। नमस्ते।
साहित्य अकादमी की ओर से मैं माननीय अध्यक्ष और अपने पैनलिस्ट को धन्यवाद देती हूँ और उनके साथ आपको भी धन्यवाद देती हूँ। हमारा ये सत्र संपन्न होता है। अगला सत्र 12:30 बजे आरंभ होगा। बाहर आप चाय या कॉफी पीना चाहें तो बाहर उपलब्ध है। धन्यवाद।